Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.
Hello, everybody. It's Paul with the Raw Life Health Show. I'm really excited about my guest today. He's a great friend, and for a long time, he's a raw vegan friend. It's John Kohler. Say hello, John.
Hi, John. Hi,
John,
Paul. How's it
it's
going, man?
great to have you back on the show, man. And just I see you in front of your garden there. John has a
Yeah.
channel called Growing Your Greens. He also has OK Raw, and he has some other wonderful channels. I'll put all those links below. But what's new, John, with you?
I mean, probably the biggest thing is I started eating a little bit of heat processed foods, and I like to say heat processed versus cooked myself. And, I've always been, since I started in raw foods diet back in 1995, I've been about 99% raw. I never claimed 100%, although sometimes there would be 100%, but I account for the 1% as like, nuts that are heat processed and just herbs and spices and other small things that aren't actually fresh. I never really, heat processed or ate cooked stuff by any large part, aside from like when I broke up with a girl and had some baked potatoes or something many years ago. But nowadays I'm eating about 90% raw. So I'm still eating, I'm eating like 9% less raw food. So I incorporated some heat processed foods, which some people are like freaking out about. But I mean, in the essence of things, actually, in my opinion, I'm eating a healthier diet than eating a 99% raw diet personally.
Well, I've always said, it's not about being 100% because it's much, even, years ago, I said it's much better to eat healthy cooked food than to eat like some type of raw candy just to stay at that 100% raw status or something.
Yep.
And to be honest, everybody, there's not many people out there that are eating an all raw diet. And if they are or not, it really doesn't matter if it's 100%, 99%. You can be perfectly healthy not eating 100%. We have to have our reasons for doing things. I went back to eating 100% raw vegan, to my knowledge, whatever. But if it's not exactly 100%, so what? Because I feel better and I do better. It's what I've been accustomed to in my life, and it works fine. But it's a process, and over the years I went back and forth. Now, John, you've been one of the study people for a long time that has been 99% raw for a long time and so on. What was it that made you say, you know what, it's not as important to have that 99% status? Was it something physical, emotional? What was it that made you change your mind about this?
So for me, it was logical. I'm quite a man of logic, and I use my brain a lot and think. And it's just like a lot of things were chipping away at what I've learned about raw foods. I mean, number one, one of the main reasons why I went raw is because I had a complement immune deficiency, and the doctor said I had a weak immune system. And then when I learned that, back in the day, in 1995, that cooked foods causes leukocytosis, which is basically an immune response. I'm like, whoa, I got an immune system issue. I can't be, doing the boy who cried wolf to my immune system. So my immune system is not as strong as it could be because I need the strongest immune system because I almost lost my life when I was younger. So that was probably my main reason. That basically, like, if I eat some heat processed or cooked foods, my immune system is going to react, and my immune system won't be as strong as if I stay all raw, based on what I learned at that time. Since that time, probably about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I learned that leukocytosis is not caused by cooked foods, actually. I learned that it's actually caused by cooked animal foods. So even if you eat the crappiest vegan cookie, it's not going to cause leukocytosis from what I understand now. So at that point, I was like, whoa, that's interesting, but I'm going to still eat raw. But then after that was going on, lately I've been learning a little bit more about other things, such as a microbiome and how critical it is to incorporate a wider variety of fibers in our diets. And if you're on a raw foods diet, you could eat this many fibers because a lot of the foods you're not eating. But if you start heat processing plant foods, then it opens up more foods that you can like eat, because some foods could be toxic if they're not heated, or the other thing besides the fiber, Paul, is the phytonutrients or plant chemicals or even mycochemicals You know, in the case of mushrooms, there's lots of studies on mushrooms and how they're anti-cancer and, anti-angiogenesis, which is like, if you have cancer, that creates new blood cells. So mushrooms stop that. Mushrooms also are very rich in a special kind of fiber called chitin, which are actually not in plants because it's from the mushrooms. So, being able to heat process my food allows me to have access to some of these foods. And more importantly, another compound that I'm really into, I know you like your astaxanthin, which is a red, algae, supplement, which I also take, which I think is very important. But I also like to eat red or purple foods, which are full of anthocyanins, which I believe to be a very powerful nutrient that is not studied enough, and I believe to be very health promoting based on some studies I've seen. And by heat processing some foods, I'm able to get more of these purple anthocyanins in my body that'll get absorbed better than just say in fruit. So if I was on a fruit diet or eating raw foods, I could eat, there's a bunch of purple foods I could eat, purple carrots, which I get a lot. You could eat purple sweet potatoes raw, which I do juice. You could get blueberries, but then also the anthocyanins may not be as well absorbed in like fruits as they are in vegetables, according to some science I've seen. But by heat processing foods, I could now get the deepest, darkest purple corn that I could find that's really super high off the charts in anthocyanins. I can now have access to eating things like my eggplants in my garden, that have anthocyanins. I could now eat basically purple sweet potatoes that have been heat processed because I could juice them, which I was been doing. But there's studies that show that if you heat process purple sweet potatoes, you heat them and then cool them and then reheat them. They're even more beneficial for your microbiome than just, eating them raw, because it transforms the resistant starch fibers into something a little bit different that you can't achieve with raw. Another purple food is purple potatoes. So I get purple small potatoes, not the super sweet russets. I don't eat those things. So I'm eating very systematically for phytonutrients and for fiber and for expanding my diet. Also, this allows me to eat more vegetables. And I believe that people don't eat enough vegetables on the planet. Everybody's watching this probably does not eat enough vegetables. Fruits are easy to eat, it's easy to eat some mangoes, but it's a lot harder to eat vegetables. So, by heat processing mangoes, I could then, like you said, I'd also agree with you. For a long time, I've said this also on my channel, that, it's far better to have some heat processed, greens, some steamed greens, kale, than like a date nut, cheesecake or date nuts and stuff. So I'm able to get more calories from vegetables now, and maybe even eat a little bit less fruit, which I believe to be good for me at this point in my life.
Sure. So one of the benefits of raw foods that we hear is the enzymes. And when you cook food, you destroy the enzymes. So how is your thinking on that changed, or has it changed over the years? Do you still strive to eat raw for enzymes, or not at all? You never did? And what's your thinking about? Do you take enzyme supplements when you do eat some heated food? Like, what's your thinking on that?
Yeah, good points, Paul. Yeah, so I still believe that enzymes are critical for our health. I am not going to imagine that my heat processed foods contain enzymes. Now, there's been times when I have heat processed foods and then fermented it. And then if you cook the food and then ferment it, then it's rich in enzymes because all the bacteria are making the enzymes and all this stuff. So they say, you could eat fermented foods for enzymes, which I could do with heat processed foods. I haven't done in a while. I think enzymes are important. My heat processed foods definitely loses the enzymes. But the other thing is, like, everybody always wants to grab that one thing. If you cook food, you lose enzymes. So now the food is bad. It's bad. Missing all the enzymes is bad. Dude, when you dehydrate eggplant, right, you according to science, there's a study on this, you lose 80 to 100% of the antioxidants, but you may be keeping the enzymes. But when you pressure cook the eggplant like I do, there's more antioxidants than there was in there originally, because it's causes to expand in the antioxidants according to the studies. So it's like, what nutrient are you chasing? Are you chasing enzymes so you can eat it raw, or are you chasing antioxidants? So I'm not going to say, to me, I would say that I don't want to even say which one's more important. Enzymes are important. Antioxidants maybe a little bit more important in my opinion. But that being said, we don't want to eat an enzyme less food. So, I mean, when I generally eat some heat processed foods, it's very specific things. I heat process in the Instant Pot whole foods only. I do not salt it, do not spice it. If I do anything, I'll eat it plain, or I'll mix the heat processed food in with my raw foods with the raw food dressing. So then I get plenty of enzymes. And if seriously people want enzymes, grow some sprouts. Sprouts are off the charts in enzymes. So, eat some heat processed food with your sprouts, or take an enzyme supplement. And I take an enzyme supplement every single day, just because I think it's a good thing no matter
You
what.
do take an enzyme supplement.
Oh, absolutely.
And you take them with your
also,
food? Are you taking digestive enzymes or
I take digestive enzymes usually at the end of the day. I mean, sometimes I'll take it with the food, but then the other thing is I believe that, I mean, the heat processed food I eat, Paul, is usually in the evening, and all day I'm eating raw. Like I just drank a juice, a raw juice, So I still eat like almost all raw, get plenty of enzymes, and I'm heat processing a few things. Now, here's the interesting part. I do get a little more tired than I used to eating the heat processed food. So like it makes it easier for me to go to sleep at night, because I get tired earlier, which could be a benefit. I mean, it could be a negative thing, but I'm glad, because sometimes I'd be wired.
Oh, I know. First of all, everybody, John is in California, and there's no earthquake. Your screen is shaking a little, your camera, but it's not an earthquake, everybody.
It's just me shaking a table and it shakes the computer.
Yeah, he's in California and he's excited. But yeah, I've spent time with John, and he does stay up. He used to stay up with so much energy to wee hours of the morning.
And that's not healthy either.
Yeah, right. But what I'm saying is now the cooked food, you're saying, has slowed you down a little, so you're going to sleep earlier. A
little bit. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So it's not about, I mean, there's many factors to consider, and I think, if people expanded their diet a little bit and having more different, varieties of nutrients and more fibers, I think that'd be a good thing.
Sure. So this is interesting, everybody. So me and John are not debating here, and we're just sharing for people's experience. But what's interesting is me and John went on an all raw vegan diet because we both had illnesses, and I did it for, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14 years, 100%. And or so to say, as close to that as possible with that in mind. And John was doing it as well. But then I had my situation where I got off 100%, and I went to maybe like 80, 90% with the little cooked foods. And John had interviewed me at that point where he was doing all raw and I was doing just a little bit less. And I went back after a couple of years. I experienced, the similar things. Well, it's interesting you say you slowed down a little, or you got more sleep, and that's one of they say the benefits is, or we don't know if it's true, but is it true that you got more energy on raw or whatever? But I definitely noticed that, and I didn't feel necessarily bad eating cooked food. I just didn't feel as good as when I did raw from an energy standpoint. Anyway, so now here we are years later, and I've been back on the all raw diet, and John's a little bit less than all raw now, and which is all good and fine both ways. And there's benefit to doing it both ways. I want everyone to know. But, for me, there's two reasons I do all raw now. I mean, number one is I have an illness, or I had an illness. And if I go back, I know I can put myself in risk, even if I'm like, I've been all raw all these years and no issues. So I don't want to put myself in risk, even though I couldn't do it strategically. The other thing is I feel great doing it this way. So if somebody out there is eating an all raw diet and you're not having health improvements for some reason, and you don't feel great, well, then maybe it's not for you in this point of your life. John, so what made you, as you're eating this way, decide, besides, the analytical side of it, thinking, well, I want to get the best I could out of my foods and I'm missing certain things by not eating them cooked. Was there anything else, social aspects or anything else that made you say, I think I'm going to start eating some cooked food? Or was it boredom? What was it, anything else, or just you wanting to experiment?
No, absolutely nothing else, Paul. So like, I'm single. So like, nobody's influencing me on how I'm eating. No doctors told me I need to eat cooked foods to be healthy. I mean, the doctor a long time ago told me I needed eggs to be healthy. He's no longer on the planet. But like, no psychological, I'm not backsliding. I don't need to eat heat processed foods to be good with myself. I'm told I had no health problems according to my blood tests, eating a raw foods diet. I was totally fine. Like there's no other reason. I mean, and actually the way I I don't see, here's the thing, like I don't eat popcorn. I mean, when you went, heat process and started eating cooked, you did a little bit different than I'm doing it very strategically. Certain foods I'm eating heat processed, and my goal is if I could eat the food raw, I'm still going to eat it raw. Like, why am I going to heat process stuff just because I'm now heat processing stuff? I'm not going to cook my kale because I could. Like, I'll still juice it because it's better juiced. Like, I mean, there's some benefit maybe to heat process kale, but I think I could get most of the benefit from raw kale or juice kale or blended kale, vacuum blended kale, without having a heat process. But I'm only generally heat processing foods that I wouldn't otherwise eat. Now, the main reason is, Paul, I mean, I had an immune system issue. I know you had a digestive system issue. And according to some of the science out there, man, like it's very important for our immune system is to have a good microbiome. And that's probably my major motivation, is to have a better microbiome. And if I have to have a better microbiome that gives me a better immune system, because I'm eating a wider variety of foods now and I'm getting more higher of certain phytonutrients because of this, and I believe I'm going to have a stronger immune system because of it, I'm going to do it, even if the cost is maybe I get a little bit more tired. And I'm going to still obviously monitor my blood and make sure everything's still good with me. But, I think, I have no other reason other than maybe there's one reason. Like, I used to love heat processed or cooked artichokes when I was a kid, because my mom would boil artichokes and we dip it in mayonnaise and eat it. And when I started first, I would eat, and this is not new, because like in a video I made, I think 7 years ago, I would say I eat frozen artichoke hearts, which have been heat processed because they've been blanched. And then they're totally sliced up, diced up, and you get just the heart. Now I'm just eating whole artichokes plain. I don't need a dip. I mean, I made it like an avocado cashew dip the first 1 or 2 times to simulate the mayonnaise, because that was like good childhood memories from having like the bone plate for the artichoke leaves and whatnot. But like after I did that once, I'm like, this is a pain to make this stupid mayonnaise crap out of avocados, and it's so high fat. I just started eating the artichokes plain, and like, dude, they're so good. And artichokes are in the thistle family, which is like liver detoxification. And it's also, even if heat processed, antioxidants are off the charts in antioxidants, and there's beneficial fibers that feed our microbiome. So, for me, this is a totally logical, move. And I'm going to continue to monitor myself and see how I feel. And if I start feeling worse, then I'm going to cut it out. Like, I don't need to eat heat processed foods. I believe that it'll allow me to become healthier and have a stronger immune system, especially important in these times when I'm trying to up my game. Meanwhile, everybody's, just eating a lot of fast food. Just a fast food place a couple blocks away, there's always a long line. It makes me so sad. I'm trying to how can I have a better microbiome? And people are like worsening their microbiome.
Sure. Now, do you find yourself, as you're doing this, do you find yourself like a little bit more and more as time's going on, just a little bit more cooked stuff is getting in, like as the months go on by, you're like, well, last month I ate maybe 5% cooked food, and now maybe it's 10% or 15%. And do you find yourself like study at an even, like this is what I do only, or is it as time goes on a little bit like more cooked foods getting in there?
See, I think this is where the problem can arise. Like, if I had traditional cooked food, like if I went out to the raw vegan or the vegan restaurant in town, which they're all crap, they serve so processed junk. Or if I started like salting and making curried lentils and all this stuff, I'd probably eat more of that. Absolutely, because it tastes good. I'd want more of it. But I'm not doing that. See, like, people don't understand like how I'm doing heat processed foods is like, I might cook some lentils, but then I'll add the cooked lentils once they cool into my raw salad. So then lentils are a component in the salad, or I might cool the lentils and then blend them up into the dressing. So now I could use less nuts and have, more lentils, which also are good and resistant starch, which is, good for our health. And so I'm doing a lot different. So I could see that if I was doing it a certain way, like people would think like, oh, John just eating any cooked stuff. Dude, I'm eating like a handful of heat processed things that might expand a little bit in the future if I find new items that I need to heat process to have better health. But like, I'm pretty consistent. Like, my main thing is I still eat I have like a raw, a couple of juices a day. a fruit meal and then a big salad meal that has some heat processed things in it, or I'll have some heat processed things after my salad meal. And that's what I do. So like my goal is to not fill up on cooked stuff or heat processed things. My goal is to fill up on raw and then fill in at the end of the day with a few things that are heat processed just to top me off.
Now, if you were at a restaurant or somewhere, even in your house, like before, if somebody would offer you something that was cooked, even just to taste, you'd be like, no way, you're crazy. Now, would you still say no? Or would you be like, look, if it's just a little thing, I'll taste it, but I'm not really interested in eating that or something? Are you more open to just trying things, or are you just not even open to trying different things?
So, I mean, once again, Paul, because I've come from doing raw foods for, since 1995, I have a very specific way of looking at things and thinking about things. Formerly I'd only eat things raw. Now I'm only going to eat things heat processed if there's certain foods heat processed and if they're processed in a certain way. So basically, the answer to your question is no. I'm not going to just eat anything cooked because it's not. Cooking could cause lots of carcinogens, and how people eat their baked potatoes in the oven and baking it causes carcinogens. My goal is to not create carcinogens when I heat process my food. So I have to use water to heat process it. And that's why I use the Instant Pot pressure cooker to heat process it for the shortest amount of time so I don't lose that many antioxidants. So I maintain as many as possible, right? And it's in water, so the temperature doesn't get too high to create cancer-causing compounds, AGEs, and all these heterocyclic amines, and all these different compounds that are created in the cooking process, which could be quite toxic.
Sure, sure. Now, when I wrote my first book, The Raw Life, I interviewed people that have been eating raw for a good amount of years, and 100% raw. And then years later, when I went to go find those people again, some of them were still thriving, but some of them were not doing raw. Some of them were even dead. And I know there's many factors other than just raw food, and we don't know what people are doing in the privacy of their own home with their diets. But you and I know some people that were pretty much raw foodist, and recently uh they passed away as well. Do you think there's so many other factors, or do you think there's something dangerous or bad about the raw food diet that people should be warned about?
That's a good question. So before I answer the question, Paul, I want to get into like the other thing I look at is like the blue zones around the world. So blue zones around the world, they're not 100% vegan. They're not by any means 100% raw. They all have something in common, which are, the main things are, number one, they eat carbohydrate dominant diet, which I totally would agree with. Not exclusively vegan though. The second thing is they eat a very high nutrient diet in general, right? Okinawan people in Japan eat a lot of sweet potatoes. They live a long time. Not to say that just because you eat sweet potatoes, you're going to live a long time. It's also other factors, stress, spiritual, all kinds of stuff. But, by heat processing things, it allows me to get in some of the foods that the peoples in some of these long-lived areas would eat. Now, do I think there's something inherently wrong with raw food diets? And, so here's the thing: raw food diets are pretty much an experimental diet. There's no long-term studies on how long raw foodists live. I've kind of, seen some of the longer raw foodists like will be juicers, Dr. Norman Walker, Jack LaLanne, Jay Kordich, 190s, I'm big into juicing. But I'm like, how could I even up that? Especially I'm looking at longevity and health span and lifespan at this point. Like, I really believe that, the more vegetables, the better. And that's one of the reasons why I heat process the food. Now, I think that there are definitely unhealthy ways to do a raw foods diet. If you're eating strict fruitarian diet and you're not getting enough, if you're avoiding vegetables, right? I personally don't think that's I don't think that's a healthy diet if you want to have a long life, personally. That's just my personal opinion. Now, show me some fruitarians that live like over 100 years old. I don't really see a lot, but number one, there hasn't been a whole lot of research on that. And the other thing is, like, I don't know, I just kind of look to science. So a lot of this is science based because I look up a lot of studies. Like almost every day I'm looking up a study on this or that. And so for me, purely it's logical on how people's lived longer lived societies that are currently living on the planet in blue zones what do they eat and how could I eat more of that on my raw foods diet, which I already believe to be one of the best diets. And the other thing I do, Paul, that's a lot different if people that are just watching this for the first time, you know, I've been on a high vegetable based raw diet, which is quite odd because most people do a high fruit raw food diet, you know, and getting more calories from fruit. So my goal for the last, you know, bunch of years is getting most of my calories from vegetables because I believe that to be more important personally. They're a lot more rich in phytonutrients and trace minerals.
Sure. There are science reports that show, and also history that shows the longest people around, living people around the world consume some sort of sea vegetables or sea fish. I'm sorry, not vegetable, but sea animals, fish, and also other long-lived communities have some sort of animal milk that's fermented, whether it's a yogurt or a kefir or something else. So a lot of people that do these foods traditionally around the world in the certain islands around the world have they live long lives, pretty healthy. Do you think you would ever go back to eating some sort of animal products?
So no, at this point, I would say no. Now it could change in the future, but here's the thing, Paul. Once again, my primary reason for going raw, one of the strong reasons was the leukocytosis. You know, and I thought that all cooked foods or heat processed foods caused leukocytosis way back in the day. That kept me raw. Now I know that it's not the cooked foods that does it. It's the animal foods, whether raw or cooked, will cause leukocytosis. I don't want to inflame my immune system or cause it to, you know, do the boy who cried wolf thing. So it's highly unlikely that I would, you know, eat any kind of animal products. Now, here's the other thing I believe, though. Here's the thing, like, why are animal products so good for us? Why are they so magical and heal people? Well, if you're eating a deficient raw food diet, animals are concentrators. They concentrate nutrients. What do most animals that people eat, right? They eat mostly plants. Animals are plant concentrators. So my goal is to concentrate the plants so that the animal doesn't have to. So, you know, that's why I juice copious amounts of greens. I'll drink a green juice this big every day. This is 4 pounds of vegetables, mostly greens in my juice, and I drink weird vegetables like ashitaba. Ashitaba stalks is my tomorrow's green juice I'll be making. Most people don't even eat ashitaba stalks. That has chalcones in it. Look that one up. CHALCONES. Most people don't even have a clue what that is. Anti-cancer, studied in Japan, I do all kinds of weird, crazy stuff, man. But here's the thing. Animals are concentrators of plants. And if you're not eating enough plants, like if you're eating fruit, you know, vegetables concentrate more nutrients, in my opinion, than fruits do. If you're eating, you know, fruits are great. I love fruits. I'm not going to diss fruits, but I think a lot of fruit eaters don't eat enough vegetables. So I really try to concentrate my vegetables by juicing them primarily. The other thing is, I agree that there's definitely nutrients in seafood, but then I ask myself the question, where does the animals in the sea get their nutrients from? It's not from plants, it's from sea plants, which are things like algae, which my salad tonight is going to have seaweed in it from Korea. That's not heat processed, it's raw, you know, seaweed from Korea. And then in addition, the other thing that's in fish is they eat a lot of algae. So algae products are super critical for our health. I eat algae. So what kind of algae? I eat, you know, spirulina, chlorella, blue-green algae sometimes. Phytoplankton is another algae or, you know, sub-algae that I eat, which is what makes the whales super huge. Most people on raw foods don't eat phytoplankton, man. And it's like, and then the other most important thing is, okay, fish takes these algae and then they make compounds out of it. And so salmon is pink because of the astaxanthin from the algae. I take astaxanthin already. I know you're really big into astaxanthin, Paul. That's important. If you're not eating the algae to make the astaxanthin, eat the astaxanthin, dude. That's so critical. The other thing I do, the fish eat all the algae. They make proper omega-3 to 6 balance. So then that's why they make their own DHA and EPA. And so they say, eat fish for DPA, eat EPA and DHA. I don't eat fish. Where does a fish get it? I could eat a lot of algae, but that's not really practical to do that at this point. So I take an algae-based EPA DHA supplement as well. So it's like I look at like, how can I get the nutrients that would be in animals, but not from animals? And like, there's a lot of minerals, trace minerals that are in animals, or even amino acids that animals concentrate that they didn't make out of thin air, that they ate very specific foods to concentrate them in their bodies. So like, I strive to look at like, what kind of seeds do I need to get enough zinc or to get enough of this, you know, copper or whatever mineral it is, or selenium, right? And then I need to eat those foods so that I could duplicate what the animal would eat without eating the animal. because I don't want to raise, my IGF one, or, enact my immune system. So I have a very logical approach. I don't know if most people are this logical. Some people are probably lost because they don't want to hear about all this stuff. They just want to, up under the tree and eat the fruit as it falls in their hand, which, that's cool too.
Yeah. What about supplements? Do you do any supplements?
So if you call astaxanthin a supplement, yes, I take that. I mean, I take a B12 because, that may not be in our food, although there are foods that may contain B12, such as duckweed. Actually, I think it's grown in Florida. There's a farm in Florida I want to visit that, they say there's active B12 in there, but I'm not relying on duckweed for my B12. I take a supplement. I mean, I might take a vitamin D when it's not, summer out. But I take some herbs and some, enzymes and probiotics, that's basically what I take.
Okay. Okay. So how long has it been now since you first started getting more into these cooked foods after being raw for over 20 years, 25 years or so?
So, I mean, it started like maybe 7 years ago. I had a video, like, I think, 7 foods I eat that aren't raw. I mean, I don't know when I made that video, but it's been a number of years. So I started incorporating, like, even just if you have frozen like corn or peas, which are generally accepted as raw, they're really blanched. So they're technically not raw, but I would count that back then. But more within the last couple of years, I started experimenting a few years ago. You could look on Instagram. I don't remember how many years ago, but I would basically heat process beans and then ferment them. And I was eating natto a number of years ago, which technically is it's heat processed, but then it's fermented. So I would consider it a live food. So that was my first introduction. And then, there's the science and all the information out there about the benefits of, of beans and mushrooms and expanding your microbiome and the anthocyanins. I could not just deny that science to be invalid as a raw food, because I believe it to be valid. Plus, looking at long-term people. So, I'd say maybe like, I don't know, I started posting a little bit here and there, probably within the last year or two, really is kind of when I really, because I've always owned an Instant Pot because I would heat process food for my dog so that he could eat more plants. But then I never really used it myself until I started heat processing beans and then fermenting them. And then probably within the last year or two, I started slowly incorporate, some heat process things myself.
Sure. And
but I was always doing mushroom powders, that were heat processed. Mushroom powders that are heat processed, and then they dry them, and then I add them to my raw salad dressing. Those are heat processed, so they're already cooked. But then I'm like, man, these mushroom powders are like $40 for 1 pound. Dude, I could buy a pound of mushrooms, like shiitake mushrooms, for like, $4. So it's like, why don't I just heat process them myself instead of buying this powder that they're doing it? And I don't even know what the hell they're doing to it. It might not even be real mushrooms that they're putting in this powder stuff.
Sure. And how about your physical body? Have you put on weight? Have you changed in any way since doing this, making this change? Has your body noticed it? Have you noticed any changes at all?
Yeah, so I probably gained maybe like 5 pounds, but I don't know. That could just be a normal fluctuation because normally in the summer I gain a little bit of weight, but I probably maybe gained a little bit of weight. And then other than that, like, I don't notice. I mean, I'm still strong. I mean, I don't work out like you, Paul. I don't go to the gym. I'm sitting out in my garden. I like I set up a sink in the backyard, and all the water goes into a bucket. So I have to seriously empty like 5, 6 buckets of 5 gallons of water. Like every day I pick up 1 bucket, or sometimes I'll do 2-handed, and I'll shuffle around my garden, pour it underneath trees and on vegetables and stuff. And that gives me a good workout.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, besides the weight issue, do you feel stronger or weaker, or not necessarily notice any change?
I would say zero effects, because I'm still as strong as I used to be. I'm still like, I don't really notice, other than being a little bit more tired at the end of the day. I haven't noticed anything personally.
Okay, great. I don't want to confuse anybody. This is the Raw Life Health Show. I'm your host, Paul Neeson, and I am strive to be 100% raw vegan diet. And for me, this is where I'm at, and I think it's a wonderful thing. But I'm open to speaking to John and other people that don't eat all raw. And I don't promote all raw for everyone because it's not necessary for everyone. Some people might do better on it for several different reasons. So again, me and John aren't debating. I'm just sharing. People could go follow John's channel and see some of the things he's discovered about these foods. And I think it's great that you're you're real and you're true to what you're doing, and you're not trying to hide anything, and that's a very important quality that a lot of people don't have, and that's when it really gets confusing. So we just got to be honest and share what we're doing and let people. We can't go by what we see with the results, because health could be quite deceptive from a look standpoint. But we got to go off of just our health in general, and John's doing great. Now there's many other factors besides food. How has your life changed in any way lately? Anything you discovered or new practices you're doing that's you believe helping your health, that you for years didn't do, and you just picked up new hobbies that are healthy other than food? Anything?
I mean, Paul, I always do new and different things. I mean, sleep is very important to me. I got this new sleep mat. Actually, it's called the chili pad. And I thought that was like bogus and stuff, but I started using it. And I'll tell you, my sleep quality improved after using the chili pad. I mean, I live in Vegas and I keep my house usually like about 79 degrees, and sleeping in warm weather. I mean, there's science on this also. It's not the best. And I would always wake up early as soon as the sun came up and it started heating up in my house. And now with the chili pad, it just allows me to maintain a cooler temperature when I'm sleeping without turning on my air conditioning. So I'm saving money and I get a better, deeper sleep. So then it's relatively new. And then I use, red light therapy, which, I never used before. And I use that pretty much every day. I use an Avicent to increase my blood circulation. Like I do all these crazy ass things that most people don't do. I don't know, do they help? I mean, definitely the Avicent helps to calm me down and calm my nerves and just make me relax, which is important. COVID has been, the virus has been a little bit challenging for me. I was being locked down because I travel a lot, and I've really cut back my travel, and that's when I really get to socialize with people. So, I mean, that's been a negative, but that's not a factor on why I'm eating cooked food to deal with my, whatever depression or whatever. I mean, no, it's been challenging for me, but I would say nothing new. I mean, I get out to my garden every day. That's a thing I do every day that it definitely calms me. I'm preparing food as I'm looking what you guys are looking at, my garden behind me, and looking at nature, being outdoors, getting sun and, fresh air. So that all that hasn't really changed much. And maybe I'm juicing a little bit more than I used to, but not much, I mean, it's the same old stuff.
Now, for curiosity and the sake of the video, some people I'm sure are wondering how old you are.
Yeah, I declined to state, Paul. I've been doing
Okay,
this for
that's fair enough.
a while,
Fair enough.
and
I know people are gonna ask. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I want everybody that's watching just to know that I interviewed many people in my books who have been eating a raw food diet for many, many years. And we all have different paths and different results and so on. And right now, where John and I am at in our lives, we feel we're doing the best we could do based on what we've learned over the years. It was just a couple of years ago, John was here at my house where we were making a video sharing what we agreed on, different subjects and different topics. And one thing about us, we keep changing to improve our situation. And, it just puts us at a place where, I love what I'm doing now, being all raw and the way I'm doing it and so on. I'm eating, believe it or not, I mean, yeah, right now it's fruit season and I got a good amount of fruits on my trees, but I'm not eating much at all. And I'm fasting on a regular basis and getting more into that. And it's feeling great. And I've been where John is in terms of went on these changes where people on the internet will watch us and be like, "Oh, I knew that wasn't working," or something else. And John's not saying that the rough vegan diet doesn't work. He's just saying that he's trying to find it to make it to work the best. And John, so is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, Paul, I think that, I encourage people to do 100% or 99%, whatever percentage of raw foods you want to do. It can work, but you need to make sure you dial it in. And please, guys, if you're doing high raw diets, 100%, 99, whatever it is, please get your blood tested, because there's many ways to do raw foods that are not healthy. And it could take your health down. It could be good to a point because it's better than what you were doing, but you could plateau and then you get comfortable and you get lazy. And then at that point, when you're lacking in certain nutrients, in my opinion, that's when your health could fall and crumble. So, my goal is to become more resilient And I believe that the vegetables will help me do that, and some heat processed foods. And maybe next year, this time, maybe I won't be doing the heat processed stuff anymore. I'm like, I'll eat more raw. Maybe, I mean, I plan on staying this way because I believe it to be healthy, but also too, it's also what I believe and also what science is telling me. But I got to see how my body reacts too. So at present time, because it's such a small amount of heat processed foods, once again, about 10%, and select foods mixed into my raw foods, you know, I feel great. And that's what I'm going to say, you know. And I think that it could be really challenging for most people out there to eat a 99 or 100% raw foods diet, to be healthier, to do actually what I'm doing now, and it wouldn't stress out as much by having some select heat processed foods in certain ways, plain, not spiced up and all this stuff. That can be quite addictive and set off our pleasure trap centers, you know, by having things like salt, sugar, and oil, which I'm still adamantly against. That has not changed one bit, you know. So I want people to eat more vegetables wherever you're at, eat more vegetables, eat more fruits. You know, the problem is in most of the country, people are eating too much fast food, too much processed food, too many animal foods. We need to get back to eating more plant foods, whether that's raw or you want to heat process them a little bit. That's still healthier than what everybody else is doing anyways.
Sure, sure. And you know, we know it can be quite interesting because I mean, I get you know, half of the people that see my videos say I look best I've ever looked and I look great, and half of the people that see the same video say I look terrible and I look unhealthy. And it's just there's a lot of different opinions out there and a lot of different things going on. So everybody don't. I mean, you can learn from other people, but you know, experiment for yourself and see what works best for you in your own situation. And you know, I could only you know, those of you that know me personally and hang around me, you know, you see what I do and how I do it. And the same thing for John. You see what he does and how he does it. And uh, you know, we're both very content right now in what we're doing. And it's not. I don't think people should make health about I'm 100% or I'm less than 100%. People should make health about doing better than what they were doing and continue to strive in that direction. And the labels and all the you know perfect things of be 100 or 99 or 75 and all this, this isn't the most important things. And you know, so and then the same hand how we feel isn't the most important thing either. I'm always a big advocate of blood tests to make sure whatever we're doing is working for us. So that's a good point you brought up, John. And you know there have been changes this past year with COVID and everything else. And I know you like to travel, so you know it takes an adjusting to get used to and stuff. And yeah, John still has his his OK Raw channel, which is wonderful, and he talks about all these things he's talked about here more extensively on that channel. He also has the best channel for juicers and appliances anywhere, discount juicers. Check out that channel on YouTube because whenever I'm a big advocate of juicing, I still use my Green Star pretty much every day now. It's wonderful. But John's the place you want to go to learn what juice is best for you and get it from him. It's one of my favorite channels still is the discount juices channel. And then the Growing Your Greens channel, which is I'm just completely obsessed with growing my own food. And John, I remember when he came out here, he was just like planting a garden in my yard, and he was so excited about it that he missed a plane just to help me finish. Like most people get upset if they miss a plane, and he was excited. He's like, I guess I'm gonna have to come finish. And he just came from the airport and left the next day after finishing my garden. It was a wonderful thing. So it's really excited, John. Now I know you're super busy, and I thank you for coming on the show and sharing what you're going through with everyone.
Yeah, I got to make my dinner now.
Yes, that's great. And what about making your food? Is it more time consuming or less time consuming? I know you're not like cooking foods for the most part. You're eating foods that might have been cooked at some point, and sometimes you are cooking it. But with what you're doing, do you find it more time consuming or less time consuming?
Oh, absolutely more time consuming because now I got to deal with another appliance. You know, normally I just chop up stuff and use a food processor or a vacuum blender, and now I got to use the Instant Pot now. So like, you know, now I got to make my raw meal. And then like last night, for example, like I had to like, you know, wash artichokes and then put 2 small sweet potatoes in there, purple ones, and get that going before I started eating my raw meal. By the time I was done with my raw meal, you know, my raw soup, and then I got to eat the heat processed stuff and sure my dog also. So it's like, it adds more complexity to my life.
Yeah, so
But I believe it to be a good thing. And You know, like right now, like normally I would just chop up stuff and add a bowl, and now I gotta, you know, get out the pressure cooker and heat process some purple jaspberry high anthocyanin rice, and then let it cool before I can add it to my raw stuff. And yeah,
And that's a
so it
great
adds a long
point.
time.
That's a great point, a good question to ask since you've done the research. What I heard when I did eat rice years ago, what I heard was it's less it's not it's much more less heartful, or I guess it's not the best to use a pressure cooker. It's better to just use a pot with water with the rice. Have you heard anything on that, on pressure cooking, taking certain nutrients out or expanding certain nutrients, make it better? Have you heard it either way?
That's a good point. So you know, I think I was looking into rice, but I don't remember the studies on that. But in general, across the board, in general, in most situations, pressure cooking is probably one of the better ways to cook things. But you know, here's the thing: everybody wants to make it. What's the best way to do it? And it depends on the ingredients and the food itself. So I just default to pressure cooker because I don't want to be buying all these cooking devices. But in general, I like to use the pressure cooker because it's easy. My stove is still disconnected in my house, and I have my microwave's disconnected. I have no other cooking appliances in my house aside from the Instant Pot. So if I can't cook it in the pot, I ain't eating it.
Yeah. Well, it definitely used to be something that was on my mind, and it was
And I
definitely
don't eat a lot of rice. It's a rare day that I eat rice because rice could be high in arsenic and have other issues. And, you know, I eat this jaspberry rice, which is high anthocyanin, very rarely. Otherwise, I would normally you know, just do bloomed wild rice, which I do in the sun, you know, and that's not heated, although it's parched when you get the wild rice. It's like American grown wild rice. But I didn't do that yesterday to have it today. So I'm just eating some jaspberry rice, which I do very rarely. I would rather eat beans than rice personally.
Sure, sure. Well, it's very interesting. If everybody wants to know exactly what John's doing, he's very open about this in his videos, and so go to his website. The links are below the video here. And John, thank you for sharing with us, and keep it up. Whatever you're doing is working. So I'm glad to see you doing okay after all this time, and that's wonderful. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for interviewing me about this. I think it's an important topic that we should discuss, and not I think that a lot of people can get too dogmatic, whatever they're doing in their lives. And it's always good to be flexible and open. And once again, I'm experimenting with my life, and I take my life into my own hands. And I think what I'm doing is prudent personally, but people can have different opinions. And, I appreciate that you're still 100% raw or whatever, aspire to be 100% raw, 99, whatever you are, Paul, and it's working for you. And I encourage people to, be smart about what they're doing and always be open to experiment a little bit. But I think also too, most people couldn't do what I'm doing, honestly, I think, because they would get emotional eating and cooked foods would be a trigger. And honestly, cooked foods are totally not a trigger for me, one bit.
Yeah.
So that's why I think if people can't understand that, I'm really eating very small amounts of heat processed foods systematically, because I don't have these food triggers because I'm not on salt, sugar, and oil and all these spices and things that people use normally.
Okay, that's good information. And thanks again for sharing, John. And everybody have a great day and a great raw life.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.